going with Irish horror this week. This is what's happening.
Irish horror.
Because this time next week, right, is St.
This time next week is St. Patrick's Day. Yes.
Right. So
Yes,
we'll have it out
and-
for St. Patty's Day. Otherwise, we would have been a day late
Right.
with the next cast. So it makes sense to drop this one on y'all now.
And to be honest, St. Patrick's Day really gets associated mostly with drinking, and which is unfortunate because you really should be looking at other fun cultural things about the Irish. That's sort of where we
I think
went
they kind of embrace it, though. We're going to talk about some of these movies where drinking is central to the plot.
That's true. That's true. Specifically, one of them. Yeah. But you know what? I personally, I get really excited when I see at the start of a movie that it was brought to you by the Irish Film Board.
Erin Film Board, yes. It is. 'Cause
It's like,
unique.
all right.
Has its own vibe entirely. Irish horror really does have its own themes that it deals with. Some really interesting characters. For the most part, they're not overdone. You've seen them maybe speckled in things before. For example, I watched The Hole in the Ground last night, and the old dude in it is the old dude from Braveheart who gets stabbed. And I was like, I haven't seen you since Braveheart, man. I love that guy. But yeah, I mean, it's its own beast.
It is.
That
It
Irish
is.
horror.
And certainly a lot of same thematic things about Irish horror that we were discussing. Let's start talking about, because it's one of the ones I watched most recently was Wake Woods.
Okay. Wake Woods. What did you think? First set it up for peeps. What was it about?
Yes. Well, it's the Irish Pet Cemetery.
It is the Irish Pet Cemetery. That's exactly right.
When I didn't really look too much into it. I read the description. It's about a couple who recently loses their daughter, and then they get the chance to spend 3 more days with her. And when you watch the movie, you find out that it has a lot to do with the town. Yeah, the town of Wake Woods has magic, and it gives you the ability to bring back a recently. It has to be recent, right? It has to be a recently.
Oh, this is central to the plot. It better
Yes,
be
a
within
recently
that
deceased.
year.
Yeah, do not lie about this. But
It could be trouble. It is trouble.
It's what the movie is, though. It's what gives us the movie.
What do you think compared to Pet Cemetery, the way their daughter is killed at the beginning of the film, compared to how we lose our kid in Pet Cemetery?
Yes. So,
That's
what?
almost where one of the big overlaps is in terms of the Pet Cemetery, because it is a dog that brutally mauls this girl, who's adorable
Yes.
at first. They got a happy family. We got
It's her birthday. It happens on her
What's
birthday.
birthday. And the dad is Aidan Gillen, so he was that slimy dude from Game of Thrones that was into
Littlefinger.
Sansa. Littlefinger, thank you very
And
much.
Carcetti on The Wire.
Oh, Carcetti on the way. And then you had, is it Timothy Spall? He's like kind of the old dude in the town. He's
Right.
the creepy Voldemort minion with the red hair, the little fat dude. So he's
Yeah.
always got great character, and
He
boy,
does.
does he represent that United Kingdom set of teeth better than
Yes, he
everybody
sure
else,
does.
Right? He's
It's-
got
it's like
character
it's-
just oozing through him.
Exactly. It's part of the whole look. Yeah. So the very beginning of this movie was cut so fast with very little dialogue, and it felt very much like a Danny Boyle film for like the first 10 minutes, and then it sort of like calms down, and you get almost like it almost looks like it like switched cameras for the rest of the movie, but
Yeah.
it looks like they shot it on video.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
to give you
agree.
that
It did
home
seem a
video
little
feel.
disjointed, but in a sense, it's almost like their memory, or as
Right,
we kind
like
of
a home
alluded
video.
to, perhaps the memory of the girl after she's been brought back of what's happened, or I think it's kind of just touching on those traumatic events are really hard to remember sincerely,
Yeah.
and kind of the fractured nature of that first sequence kind of points to that, because we don't know what's going on in little Alice's head like ever after she comes back.
No.
Do you think it was one of those progressive things where she kind of becomes evil after she's been around for a half a day or whatever, or did she pop out? Oh, we should talk about how they bring him back, because
Right.
this is some interesting pagan stuff going on here.
Certainly interesting the way they bring people back. You need the flesh of someone else,
Right.
and they they have this other man who lives in the town who recently died, and man, do they
Oh
put
my
him
gosh,
through.
his death too was grisly.
Yeah, killed by
Animals.
a cow.
That's another thing we didn't mention. Is animals is a big motif throughout some of these Irish horror films.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in this, I've never seen a steer like crush a man the way that this steer does. Just backs into him. They can't get the gate open. He's kind of asking for it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He gets behind the cow. You're like, don't get behind a cow.
But not only does he gets kind of smushed, but then finally when they get the gate open, the steer adds insult to injury and just grinds him into the ground even further.
A vendetta. That cow had a vendetta.
It did. It definitely. Well, we were kind of like poking and prodding it. But, I mean, they were doing their job, I guess.
They were.
So.
Yeah, you hear the sound of the bones crunching in that moment, and in the moment when they're actually doing the ritual, they put him in like this press, and they crush and grind like he's going through a juicer or something. They're squeezing everything out of it.
Well, they slather a bunch of weird stuff on it too, right? Didn't they put a bunch of like weird liquids on it? And it was above a fire, wasn't it? They had to like cook it, like cocoon it. Was there a fire there? There was a fire. I feel like underneath it, and then ultimately they chop off half of it after it's kind of like cocooned up, because you do have to put a body part or hair of the deceased that you're trying to bring back. So they had to dig up their little girl to get. It was a pretty gruesome scene in itself, digging up the little girl and cutting off her finger.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I didn't see that coming. It was kind of intense, I would say. I liked it as a whole. I felt like it brought me back to almost the Wicker Man in vibe.
Mm-hmm. I'd say some of the most violent horror-esque scenes in the movie are right there, where you're almost it wasn't the violence of the little girl later. It's the violence that the rebirth is.
Right. The little girl's pretty violent though. And okay, this is another thing that kind of, I mean, the Pet Cemetery, we're talking about location and the significance of the location, and you have to bury the bodies in that pet cemetery to bring them back.
Right.
But in this one, that's not the case. You got the voodoo going on above ground, but then they're constricted to this town, this Wakewood. They can't.
Correct.
The recently reborn, the resurrected, cannot leave that area. Essentially, like can't go past the new windmills. Is there any significance there? What's up with the hydraulic wind-powered turbines that represent the border?
To me, I think it was modern culture. I think the idea that they had these massive windmills there, which they show in the very beginning, they jumped out to me. And I'm like, oh, look at all those wind turbines. And I think it has, it's that you cannot go, into the present if you want your daughter. You must sort of become one of us, stay in this town, and leave the outside world behind if you want to see your daughter for 3 days.
Yeah, I could see that. It might also be like pointing to just like you can't go back sort of thing is the underlying like theme of what's going on. There's no going back. The wind blows and it can't blow backwards. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And when you try and capture that kind of naturalness, you are then creating something that is foreign and potentially problematic. Because it's certainly a blight on the Irish landscape. I certainly am pro wind power, but the argument people have is that they look like shit.
They are a bit of an eyesore.
Compared to, Ireland's beauty, they are not all that good looking.
Yeah.
Sacrifice there.
They should have built them out of wood.
Yeah, Don Quixote style.
The Don Quixote version, yeah.
So we're dealing with here, like in a couple of these other films, a kid that you expect to be one thing that's turning out to be another. That is essentially a changeling. We're going to talk about changelings later. But even when the town brings it back, you're going to have 3 days. You're going to be able to get over it and really say your goodbyes. It's meant to be a good thing.
It's meant to be a good thing. However, it's that part of you that should probably have just let it be, because it's not going to be the same. Your daughters, they even say part of like as a warning. They're not gonna remember everything.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, she wakes up back in the house. She's like, the house is strange. Did I really just sleep through the entire trip to this new house? Because they moved from the town where she was mauled. I don't know. At first, it felt like maybe she was okay. You think she's putting on an act, huh? Did she know what she was until the old lady kind of tested her?
That's a great question, and you know, you might need to watch it a second time to see if there's any clues there, because I thought she was you know, happy go lucky until the old woman kind of questions her. But
and after that, then she's flaying the dog that they just adopted too, right? Didn't
right.
she flay it?
Yeah, completely removed its hide. Like, can I just say one thing though? So they get their daughter back after having like recently lost her, and one of the games they decide to play with her is hide and go seek. And I'm thinking, poor choice. You just lost your daughter. Let's go play hide and seek in the woods, and they lose her.
Yep. And that happens in other Irish horror that we've watched as well. You don't let the kids into the woods.
Don't let the kids into the woods by themselves.
Not a wise idea. Another kind of hiccup for me in this one was ultimately you have, you know, this Timothy Spall Arthur granddaddy of the town coming in there who's offering this kind of like Rumpelstiltskin-esque sort of deal.
That's true.
And you have our father figure. He's like, what? That's silly. That's no such thing as bringing back a kid. And he's like, well, you should ask your wife. Yeah, he does. And she's all right. Well, let's do it then. You know, it just
he was quick. Yeah, he was quick to.
He easily sold on this.
However, he was so quick to try to get rid of all of his daughter's belongings too. By the way, he had everything packed up, ready to go. Like he was ready to move on. He said. I think he even said something like it's a black hole in here or something. Like it's just, you know, the memories.
That's interesting. We don't really know what they were doing when she died. Was the mom a pharmacist then? She must have been, because it's only been a year that's passed, right? I was trying to think if there's any significance to the jobs that they then take in the town of Wakewood after the daughter is gone.
Right.
Well, one can assume that she was a pharmacist, but do you think he was like a farmhand working with animals?
I think he was a vet. I personally think he was a vet if he's able to cut into the side of a cow and remove a calf from its. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's a farmhand trick there.
Oh, that was intense. You're absolutely right.
That was one of the more violent.
There, though, with what you're saying, in that he's able to kind of move on in a way that the mother isn't. That's a little stereotypical, but the fact that his job is tending to animals that is what's responsible for his daughter's death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, because even in the end, I mean, well, let's really quick. Let's talk about all her slicing and dicing when she does embrace the demon that's inside of her.
Right.
What did you think about some of her means of murder?
Man.
Was it a hoe? Did she use a hoe on that old lady?
Yeah, neck? There was that. I'm trying to actually go back through the kill scenes in my head and.
Because she goes they weren't geezer folks, you know. She's not.
I'll say this about the overall style of horror in the movie, because I believe this was Hammer Horror, which is an old UK production. They, you know, they're the ones who did the revitalization of all the classic Universal monster movies during the 60s and 70s, and I think they produced this. And I really think that they leaned into the style of the old horror, where you don't really see. You saw more violence happening to the animals than you did to the humans. It was one of those classic old horror.
That's kind of true. Yeah.
Like even when the man gets crushed by the cow, you're really not. You're seeing like his face and his expressions, and then you cut to the shot of the ground, of the blood on the ground.
That's a good point.
So, going to connect that to the child murder scenes, I mean, they seem sort of like old 70s 80s horror, where you're not really seeing a lot of the action.
You kind of there was, I mean, toward the end, I feel like when she rips the woman's heart out, though, that's happening pretty
when she like fishes up into it, like she knows exactly where she's going to. By the way,
She does. She's open to it. She's her hand.
Yeah, she's like, yep, there it is. Pluck.
Yoink.
Yeah.
And then she really kind of takes down her dad there before that even happens, because he's carrying her on her back after he thought he had killed her with the tranquilizer or the poison.
Yeah, which is another moment where he had gone to. He gets called off to a job because he has to, and an injured animal.
People that know this is his last day with his daughter too, like, no, we need you to come take care of it.
Just so rude. Like, I mean,
the last of your third days with your dead daughter before she has to get put back into the ground. But would you mind coming over and put one of these cows out of the misery?
Pretty important. And he's loading up the syringe,
right?
And that guy questions it, and he's like, "No, the animal's too big." Even then, he's like, "Oh no, I could use this on my daughter."
I know, everyone. You can tell that's what's going through his head then. Oh, especially because I think he knew that the daughter had mauled that cow that he was going to put down.
Yes. Yeah.
And do you think that the people that called him there had known that it was likely her?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I don't think so yet, at least.
Fair.
I think it was more like the father, like, "Oh, I got to cover my daughter's tracks," type of a thing.
Right. Another big reoccurring thread does also happen this one in the ground. At the end, the mother gets sucked into the ground after they finally take care of the kid. And she's kind of half buried. Oh, it's a really weird, interesting. I kind of liked it, scene where she's putting the daughter to bed after she's kind of been dispatched properly. We're going to put you to sleep now. And she's like, instead of putting covers over, like tucking her in, she's tucking her into the dirt. She's like spreading the dirt on her like it's a blankie. And then, of course, she gets sucked in and she gone.
Right.
And then, of course, we have our end. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you're getting spoiled left and right.
Yeah, we're going to spoil the ending right now here for you.
We got to.
We have to.
Because did you like the end where he's going to bring back his wife now for a 3-day adventure?
That, to me, implies that we knew exactly, like, where the... Yes, the daughter pulls the mother down into the ground. But they could have tried to save her then. Because they know, my first impression was when I'm seeing this, it was reminding me of like Freddy versus Jason when he pulls the mask down into the earth. But I'm thinking, oh man, that mom's gone. She's gone forever. And a year later or whatever it is, they're just able to dig her up. So it was just in that same spot.
Well, don't you think they specifically? Well, I mean, this is what just is so ludicrous, right? Because she comes back and now. It was mentioned that, she was probably pregnant, and she got pregnant the first night that the kid's back, because now the parents' depression has vanquished for a second, and they get it on. So in theory, she gets pregnant that night, but the kid knows she's pregnant 2 days later or whatever. So she's got to have been brought back 9 months later and had been, like, building that baby in the underground. You know what I'm saying?
I guess
that was kind of a big leap for me, because suddenly she's only back for 3 days, but she's got a full baby in the belly, and it's mature enough that he can cut it out. That's where we're left. Our little cliffhanger there. He says, no, it doesn't say, but we get the scalpels there on the table, and it's insinuated that he's going to bring out the baby, and maybe that can live past the 3 days, even if
and he looks right into the camera. Very Thriller. Michael Jackson ending where he just looks right. He doesn't turn right to us.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than just having her getting sucked in, and that was that, I guess. But
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, my point is just that everyone must have just been like, "Yo, you gotta let your wife stay in that hole, man." Yeah,
they should have. I mean, that town should know better. You know what I mean? Than to be allowing this to happen, anyways.
I'm just surprised that they even let him bring his wife back.
I know after the first
This didn't go well for you the first time, but we're going to let you try it again.
Especially after he couldn't be trusted, because he straight up lied about how long his daughter died.
How long? Yeah.
It'd be one thing if his wife was
11
the one
months.
had kind of like lied, but I don't know. In a way, it kind of felt like the feminine characters were vilified when we think about gender roles in it more than the guys were.
That's true.
I feel like she got more of the responsibility. She's the one that really wanted to bring him back, and then she comes back, and now she's on board with having the demon spawn be left into the world. Was that going to be able to walk outside of Wakewood? These are questions that we'll never know the answers.
No, we never will. I guess I'm okay with it.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
It was a fun watch.
Yeah. No, yeah, I liked it. I mean, I could see forgetting it in 10 years, rewatching and enjoying it again, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
It's one of those ones that, you know, it has chops. Not going to make my best of lists, but it's got some moments. It definitely
I think this is a good transition is to now talk about The Hole in the Ground.
The Hole in the Ground.
Because this is also about, this is about a mother, like, going to live in the country, you know? Which, to go back to Wakewood, like, why did they move out there in the first place? Were they trying to get away? You know, the idea here is you move out to the Irish countryside and you don't know what's going to happen because you don't know what they practice out there.
Exactly. That happens in the Hallow, too. That's how the Hallow starts, is they move out to the country.
Okay, there you go.
And ultimately, the other one we're going to talk about that's that trippy one. What is it? Not Don't Leave Home. The one where they take all the shrooms, but it's not shrooms.
Okay.
Because he goes out to the country to kind of research it's not Wakewood, it's another woods one. Without Name. Without Name,
yeah.
Right? Yes, Without Name, which is actually the name of a wooded area that doesn't have a name for a reason. We'll go back to that one in a second. But yes, The Hole in the Ground, once again, woman escaping, it sounds like an abusive relationship with her husband.
Yeah, wants a fresh start, slow things down, move out to the countryside with her son.
Who's a brat even before he's a changeling.
Yeah.
Right?
He's a brat before he was a changeling.
Calls his mom a liar left and right. But she knows what a brat he is, so when he does come back as a changeling, he's kind of sweet as a butt, and she's like, this ain't my kid. My kid's a
Yeah. That's like that episode of The Simpsons where like there's the two Barts, and you're like, wait a minute, you've got the good Bart. Why do you care? It looks just like your kid.
I liked this one a lot, and I thought the way that it was filmed was gorgeous.
Oh,
like
beautifully
the opening
shot,
sequence, the way they played with duality, especially even just that opening sequence when she's driving in the town with the kid, and it's like an upside down shot. It was almost reminiscent of what they do in Candyman in the urban area, but they did it in the rural zone. I thought it was gorgeous to watch.
Yeah, well, it kind of reminded me of the intro to The Shining as well. You know, just like those beautiful, sweeping.
Yeah, universe of The Shining for sure. And she was good, right? I hadn't seen her before. I thought the mother was pretty solid.
She was. Well, the little boy, you know, this is kind of not every child actor is really good, and I thought he was actually pretty good.
I thought he was too. Who would you be more scared of, this kid or Macaulay Culkin in The Good Son?
Macaulay Culkin in The Good Son. There was just something in his eyes.
He's the scariest for sure. But another changeling thing. But yeah, I'd love to talk about just why are the Irish so obsessed with changeling? Because in the Hallow 2, you have another situation. It's a baby instead of a kid, where it's not talking back, so you don't know as overtly as you do in this one.
Well, in Irish folklore, and I think this is like probably maybe all of the UK, is that they believed that, I believe it was the fairies would come and take your child and swap it out with another child, and I think that's just probably been in like their stories. I imagine passed down from generation to generation until we see it in their film work.
It probably might precede like their conflict with the British, but I'm just thinking like even going back to Scotland and Ireland have kind of a kinship in the way that they've been subjugated by the UK or England specifically.
The Crown,
and how ultimately they've been bred out in some cases, you know what I mean? So it's like Prima Nocte and Braveheart. I can't believe it's becoming so Braveheart centric. But ultimately the power then comes in there and is able to supplant the future, you know, through breeding and stuff. So to me, I kind of saw like these anxieties of, the Irish people are not allowed to perpetuate their own people. Because there's always these powerful entities that are controlling that future. I don't know. That was just something that was popping in my head, and I was seeing, why is there so much changeling business? But I think you're right that it also does go back to probably folklore that precedes even what was going on there. And the pagan stuff, of course.
What did you think of the neighbors, the woman who kind of like sets the story like into motion, or don't they almost hit that woman?
Oh, the woman that she almost becomes, essentially.
Yes.
Yes, this is the actor from Braveheart's wife, where the same thing had happened to her, where their kid disappeared, came back, and now was different, and only a mother could tell. Like, the dad was kind of in denial about it. But what was interesting about this is we never really saw it when then she's kind of cracking up and thinking that the same thing happened to her son, our main character, and she goes to him and shows him the picture that she'd taken, because apparently it's a la The Ring, where there's some distortion on the picture that demonstrate that they're not human, right?
Right.
But that's never really shown. I mean, it must be really subtle, because he looks at it for a long time and says, I don't see anything.
I don't see anything.
But she was freaky. His wife, who was completely bonkers, who killed the changeling of her own son and didn't have the wherewithal to go find out what happened to him like she does here at the end. She set the tone, man. I thought she was a great beacon of horror, for sure.
But to be clear, the old man that you're talking about from Braveheart is James Cosmo, who,
is that his name? Okay.
Who was also in Game of Thrones.
Ah, okay, that makes sense.
But was also in another Irish film I watched this past week. But the crazy thing is, he's Scottish.
Oh, okay.
He just finds his way. I mean, the UK is filled with a ton of amazing actors. So you got a chance to work with James Cosmo, you're going to do it.
Yeah, the Irish and the Scots definitely have that kinship where they've been trying to break free. So yeah, that makes sense. He's great too. He's always the way he whipped down that camera. Oh my god!
Not to compare everything to Pet Sematary, but he's kind of like the Fred Gwynn old man character in Pet Sematary, the neighbor who sort of just gives you your exposition and set things into motion. And
yeah, considerable archetypal symmetries there. Yeah, you're right. What did you like the creature design at the end? So she's finally susses out, this ain't my kid. She has this great test for him. First of all, she determines, oh, wait a minute. She tells him, I'm going to make your favorite food. She comes out
spiders.
Oh, yes, that's right. He hated spiders. Next thing you know, he's walking around like a spider on the ground eating spiders. And then suddenly he likes grated Parmesan cheese when he didn't before.
What a weird kid. You're not my son.
Yes. But, I mean, the best moment was they had this little game where they count down from 3, and then they give each other funny faces. And she says, okay, we haven't done this in a while. She goes, 3, 2, 1. And the kid just blankly staring at her. That, to me, was one of the scariest scenes in the film.
That was creepy, for
sure. You could see it registering with her and like, I'm not crazy. This is something else.
Yeah.
And to have that in your house, that to me is why The Hole in the Ground was probably one of the scarier ones we watched. And that when something can permeate your most comfortable zone without you knowing it.
Yeah. To get to the ending, though.
Oh yes. The whole faces.
I liked the set. I liked the underground set. I'm just not so sure this all worked out. Like, as far as like the whole film goes, it kind of went off the rails here.
I agree. I mean, the way it took her 10 minutes to crawl one direction and then like 2 seconds to crawl back while dragging the kid. Yeah. And she takes like a little siesta in there for a moment while she's initially crawling. Like, what is going on here? I thought she was stuck. But no, she's just tired.
She's just sleepy in the hole in the ground.
But I thought the creatures were cool. I really, really like the way that they look, because I'd never seen a changeling that just has to touch you to become you. I liked that a lot. I thought that was really powerful. I did find it weird, though. They're coming at her all vicious, like they're going to hurt her. But when she's touched by one of them and it becomes her, again, you just have the blank stare. It's like something seems to metamorphosize in them to make them a little human or something.
Right.
Because why wasn't it attacking her? And then she was able to just take it down.
I don't know.
I don't know.
And then what? Yeah. It was a bit confusing.
It was. But I still, nevertheless, I really liked it. It's worth it just for the beauty, you know?
Absolutely.
The cinematography is amazing. So.
Very enjoyable movie. And, this is like a world that they could probably expand on. I'm not saying we need a sequel, but you could. Unlike Wake Woods, this one could use a sequel.
Yeah. And like the actual hole in the ground is pretty cool too. That was a great shot. And okay, explain this to me, because when she first calls him out, he beats her up or whatever, throwing her around the kitchen, a little ludicrous, whatever. Right. I can take that. But what I liked and was confused by at the same time was then he then drags her out, and it's the most iconic promo shot you see is the kid there standing, or he kind of passes out after doing, because he's been sedated by her before he beat her up. Like, he takes her outside, digs a hole just for her head, puts it in there, and then covers up her head. Not unlike what we see happened in Wakewood at the end too, with this idea of like getting back into the ground as this connective force or deconnective force. Because it's a really, really compelling image. That shot right there.
From the very creepy.
Shot. Yeah, it definitely is. But I was like, is he now trying to turn hers? Is that a way for him to like, here, I got a face for you, my buddy changelings?
Right. Was he trying to, instead of having to go through the whole hole, was he trying to just do a shortcut?
Yeah. Maybe he would have kept going, but he was sedated, right? So he did pass out, so we don't know how far he would have gone with it, I guess.
Yeah, that's probably it. That's probably it.
I would just want to talk briefly about the Hallow, unless you had anything else to say about the whole.
No, and I haven't seen the Hallow.
It's awesome. It was really fun. I think I like the Hole in the Ground better because it's more artistic, but the Hallow is more of a non-stop horror thriller, and you got multiple creature features, and they're like mossy, black, venomous sort of looking things, where again you have a couple going out to the country. The guy's messing around in the woods too much, and it pisses off the fairies. And they start just harassing him and his wife. It's almost like The Strangers. It has a lot of The Strangers vibe in it.
Yeah.
But instead of, psycho serial killers, it's these fairies saying, get the hell out of our territory. You don't belong here. And then, of course, they swap babies. There's a baby swap. But it was enjoyable.
I'll definitely check that out.
I mentioned this before, but when I visited Ireland in August, we actually watched that one there. So that's the only Irish horror I was able to watch in Ireland, and I enjoyed it. It was really unique.
Okay. That has a I'm trying to remember the director, Corin Hardy, did The Nun.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. I think James Wan must have really liked him.
It's visually awesome. You'll recognize Michael Smiley is in it, and the way he's dispatched is you've seen him probably in Black Mirror. He's all over the place. He's in Kill List, one of my favorite horrors of all time. He's the buddy in Kill List. The cast is great. It's definitely worth a look, and it's not that old. 2015 we're talking about here.
Sure.
I think it probably fell under a lot of people's radar. So
yeah, I think that's just it. But it's the poster. If you look at the poster, you're like, I've seen that. I've maybe like on Shudder, I've gone over it. I just haven't watched it. It's an interesting poster for sure.
It is, because he's actually carries a scythe at one point, because it is a farm. So he's using that to cut the grass or whatever.
Right.
But then because fire is one of their weaknesses, does become a useful tool. He uses it as a little flame scythe, which is not something you've seen before.
No, that's the image on the poster.
Exactly. But yeah, that's another Changeling one, and I definitely would recommend it. One I would not recommend, however, and I couldn't even get through, and I wanted to, and apparently it has won some stuff at South by Southwest, and I didn't not like the performances. I just was not compelled by the story. Is one called Don't Leave Home from 2018. It's about an American artist, but it's actually an Irish woman pretending to be an American. You can kind of tell. And she makes these artistic dioramas. So this horrible occurrence happened on this property in Ireland that she's brought in to recreate the diorama. And one big part of that diorama is this big Virgin Mary statue. But it becomes a little too... granted, I didn't finish it. I got about halfway through before we had to abandon it because it was kind of painful. because there was a lot of talk about just the light being scary, and like then they said, what do you think was in that light that moved strangely? One of them was like, oh, I think it was grace. It just had a little bit too much of a religious undertone. It wasn't working for me in terms of horror, so we had to bail.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds kind of boring.
Yeah, it was boring, I think is the right way. And granted, you didn't see the end. Maybe it really picks up. I mean, right now it's only got a 5 out of 10 on IMDb, so I guess that's not the worst, but yeah, not for me. But another one that we both did watch is Without Name. Did you see you did see Without Name, right?
Now I'm confused. I don't know if I have actually.
So Without Name is about the guy who goes. He's a not a prospector, but what are the guys who measure the land?
A surveyor.
Surveyor. Yes.
Yeah.
Did you see this one?
No.
Okay. Ultimately, this one also has stuff involving the shimmering light, but really in this one, it's better because it's shot so much better. It's just so much sleeker, and it has a much more nefarious pseudo villain, if you will. So this guy goes out to do a job to survey this land of this no-name woods. Of course, his equipment starts to get messed with, and he thinks it's like locals. And he finds this one guy who's at the bar who does a lot of shrooms. So then he does shrooms with this guy, and then this girl who's his student from the city comes and is helping him with the landscaping. And she's great because I don't know if you're watching that new show by Ridley Scott on HBO right now, Raised by Wolves. But she's one of the 2 female leads. She's not the robot female lead. She's the human female lead who had her face completely reconstructed. Yes, she's in it as like the secondary lead next to the dude, and she's really compelling in it. They're all pretty good, but at the heart of this ultimately is the woods and the shrooms combined make this guy go bonkers because it's attached to this mythical past where he then loses track of his own self. His family has to come looking for him. But what's really interesting, and only because I've recently been watching nature documentaries, is it kind of goes too artistic in what it does toward the end, in that he's done this, like he found this book from the previous guy who went crazy in the lodge that he's at that kind of puts together this perfect concoction of shrooms and plants that he takes. And then like he's able to see anything in the woods because in the Subterra, there's fungus. So if a tree is getting hurt somewhere, like the whole forest knows about it sort of.
Oh, interesting. So, like, that's cool.
It's philosophically, it's very cool. I'm not sure mainstream audience is going to get what's happening because it really gets convoluted, I guess, at the end. If I hadn't seen the nature doc, I'm not sure I would have known what was going on. But ultimately, he becomes part of the woods too, and then is able to like go anywhere and see his family trying to find him, and his ex-lover or whatever trying to find him. And they do find his body naked in the woods, but he's still in it and alive, and he can see the other guy who did the same thing with the concoction. It's psychological horror, like done pretty well. I thought it was unique. But the end, like the last 2 minutes, is just tree branches like flashing at you.
That
so
kind of
I don't think
reminds
it's
me of the
for
movie,
everyone.
The movie From the Earth. It kind of reminds me of that. Very psychedelic and nature. Yeah.
Yeah, toward the end, it definitely gets too psychedelic.
Well, the other
it was its own thing.
I'll still check it out just because I really like that title and I like that idea. The name of the woods is Without Name. The movie I mentioned a moment ago that also has James Cosmo, the Scottish actor from Game of Thrones. It's a movie called Outcast from 2010, and it has a lot to deal with magic. It's about a mother and a son who are on the run and take up shelter in this like apartment complex, and the mother, you could tell, actually the mother is played by, I think her name is Kate Dickie, and she's also from Game of Thrones, but you would know her more from the movie the witch. She's the mother from the movie The Witch.
Oh yes, the
Yeah,
one where
she's
the ravens
fantastic.
be chomping on her.
Yeah, she's so good, and she's the mother. She takes her son. The son's name is like Fergal. I forget, it's a terrible name. But they're in hiding all this whole time from the father. You find out wants to come and kill the son and like take his body and skin and but the weird thing is this whole movie takes place in Scotland. So it's an Irish movie with Irish actors, takes place in Scotland because that's where they're hiding out. But it was cool. The boy falls in love with this girl while he's there. The mom like forbids it. So it's got like a little bit of a romance story there, and it's told completely like with magic. It was fun, and it was the Irish Film Board was on that one as well.
Okay, well, since you brought up something where we're kind of mixing cultures, I watched today a American horror film set in Ireland.
Okay.
And granted, all but this core family of a father, his wife, and their 2 kids, one of which the boy gets eaten by the notorious Rawhead Rex. I don't know how I had never heard of this. I think maybe I'd seen on Sea Monsters you post a picture of him like a year or 2 ago.
Yeah.
But this creature feature is bananas. Like, it's absolutely insane. Just to try and describe what this Rawhead Rex looks like, it's like a Bigfoot combined with was it Bebop from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Sure.
It's ridiculous. And as I noted before, you could see the lines on the mask. The teeth didn't like move, and they looked really rubbery. It was so absurd. As known as you, I wish I had been drinking or something with it, because I think I would have had more fun than watching it stone cold sober. But even so, it was. I got through it. Compared to Don't Leave Home.
Right.
But it's really campy, and again, we're dealing with the ground, the earth, the legacy of the land in this one, which. The subtext of Rawhead Rex, I think, is considerably more complex than what the surface lets on. It was written by Clive Barker.
I was going to say that's because it was written by Clive Barker.
Yes, I really think it's anti-religious, anti-Catholic, even more than anything else is what's going on, because you have this priest character who then starts worshiping Rawhead Rex, and he gets baptized by Rawhead Rex. By Rawhead Rex whizzing on him.
Classic.
Yeah. It is unlike anything I'd seen before, but I don't regret watching it. And the only American characters are this guy who's going over there to literally study holy spots and what was going on in these like places where churches were laid before the churches were laid there, and most of the time it had some pagan significance that was a precursor of the Catholic churches. I mean, granted, in the end, the spoiler alert, they have to find this totem thing that turns out to be looks like a fertile woman, sort of gray stone, really. And when our main American tries to take him out with this, nothing happens. It's not until his wife comes and picks it up that like, oh my gosh, we got lightning popping out of every gravestone now. But if you want the most gratuitous kissing scene I've ever seen in a movie ever, where they're trying to make it look sexy and it's just the most cringe worthy smooch session, it's this one. And it's the American and his wife walking down the streets of this town, Rathwood, I want to say it is. It's something. Rathmore. And they have no chemistry, and it's so the casting is absurd, and that she looks like she's much older than him. And
wait, are they walking and kissing at the same time?
They stop and
I was gonna say, because
she tries to be sexy and is like doesn't do well, and then you could see the froth in both of their mouths. It was really, really a kissing scene you can't miss because of how Ingraining it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to get you a clip of that one because ooh boy. But yeah, that as I was noting to you before, not a comedy per se, but if you go into it looking at it like it's a comedy, it's worth watching. If you're taking it as a straight creature feature, you're going to be very, very disappointed. And even because I think it's 1986, even though you got the beautiful Irish landscape, it just feels really dull.
Yeah.
I know you said it was remastered, but the greens are not green; they're very grayish. It's not. It doesn't really portray Ireland in a beautiful way at all.
Yeah, I think they like this past year, it just was like remastered in 4K. So maybe it's worth rewatching it that way.
Just for the creature design alone, especially because like they describe him as 8 foot tall, but it's obviously like a 5'5" man, you know,
on stilts.
Yeah, not even. They don't even try that hard.
Did you happen to see Stitches?
No, I tried to find it. I couldn't find it.
Okay, because that one is one of those just fun slasher type of a take. More like a midnight movie. You know, you would put this on at midnight, and it's about a clown that these kids, they tie his shoelaces together, and that's how he ends up like dying. And then he comes back years later to like take these kids out, and it's. Whoa. I just say that it's fun, but it's fun.
Wait, explain to me. They tie their shoelaces together. What do you mean?
Yeah, the boys, the clown Stitches. They at the birthday party they tie his shoelaces together as a prank.
Okay.
And he falls and he gets and he dies.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and then like 6 years. It's like it's like a horror comedy.
Scary looking, or what's the deal?
Yeah, yeah. And his eye has been like removed, and he's got like this scar over his eye. And it's a fun take on a clown. You're like you kind of like you're rooting for him.
An Irish clown.
Yeah, Stitches.
Wow, how do they play up the space? Being as Ireland utilized properly, or is it kind of an afterthought?
It's kind of an afterthought. It is more about like more of a suburban like. Okay. It kind of. I've never been to Ireland, but it kind of makes me feel like, oh, you know, this is just like a little slice of the suburban life, and you know, a kid's birthday party.
Fair.
But yeah, it's worth watching if you can get your hands on it.
Stitches, and you said you'd seen Shrooms too, which we had just
I've seen Shrooms. I haven't seen Shrooms.
What's the premise?
Shrooms is more about like kids in the woods take a bunch of psychedelic mushrooms, and then they start just getting like knocked off one at a time. But they're all under like this, you know, drug-induced mushroom, whatever you want to call it.
Worth watching.
Adventure.
Is it worth a look?
Yeah, it's been a while since I saw that one in the theater, and I just remember at the time maybe not enjoying it as much, and I should probably give it another shot.
Fair. We did want to mention, I haven't seen it for a minute, but I really loved Byzantium. This is a vampire film, a mother-daughter vampire film, which is rare, and also directed by Neil Jordan, who did Interview with the Vampire. So I remember really enjoying the aesthetic of it, a lot of neon going on in it. A good noir feel to it. Maybe more dramatic vampire than super horror, but it like a let the right one in sort of vibe, I would say, more than, or even Interview with the Vampire and hardcore horror vamp. But beautiful movie. Another one.
Yeah. I was going to say, wow, you don't really hear about Irish vampire stories, but it reminded me that one of the other movies on my list that I mentioned to you was Boys from County Hell.
Oh, yeah.
And that one is really fun. And they like, they accidentally dig up like a vampire. And then it just starts, you know, feeding on them. It's super fun.
Speaking of bloodsuckers, this is one we both watched.
Oh, yeah.
Grabbers, baby. Yeah, the last ones we're going to talk about right quick here is the funny ones, the funny horror.
Yeah.
Grabbers takes the cake. I don't know. I couldn't decide between Grabbers and Extraordinary, which I thought was funnier.
You know, I'd have to say that I really enjoyed Grabbers more. Yeah. Just the premise was so original, so good, and yet, you know, poking fun at this stereotype of the Irish culture that, you know, that they're, well, the idea is you can't, like, they're aliens that basically try to suck the blood out of these humans, but they they can't suck the blood out of a human that has consumed a ton of alcohol. So the town decides at their pub that they have to stay drunk. And no one seems to have,
they have to be at least 0.2 levels of intoxication.
And no one seemed to have a real problem with it. It was just fun.
No, that's what's so funny is the town initially doesn't really know what's going on. All they tell them is, guys, we're going to celebrate this cop's rival in her departure. She's only there temporarily.
Yeah.
And then just they're like free bar, then they're all there, get wasted.
Oh.
Yeah, the one guy, he only had a couple pints, and he got his head popped off. So
yeah, that's...
you really
come on,
have to
guy.
follow through.
We've made it clear. You've just got to stay drunk.
Such a fun cast, though.
Oh, yeah.
As you mentioned, who's the main cop we got here? He's a drunk cop. So he's kind of the one where they figure out why he wasn't killed when this thing sucks onto his face. It's kind of like a squid alien-esque sort of face
tentacle
thing.
Yeah,
but bright blue. I don't know about the color design of it. That was the only thing that kind of threw me. But since it is comedy-esque, I was able to run with it.
Right.
And the big one is legitimately scary. It has eyes within eyes.
Yeah. Fun creature design.
Definitely.
Yeah, but the main actor, he you might recognize him. Like I saw this movie, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago or whatever it was, and at that point I had never seen him in anything. And then you watch Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and he's the headmaster on that show. Completely different role. Which, yeah, I mean, he's really, really great.
He's awesome. So is the main girl in it. She's been in Ted Lasso and Humans and The Fall. But I also really loved this actor who plays the nerd scientist. He was in that recent HBO miniseries Years and Years. He's got ears that pop out.
Oh,
Years and Years was the show, but his ears kind of pop out. Russell Tovey. He played a really fun nerd where he was the one that was fighting against calling these monsters grabbers.
Right.
But this old crotchety guy was the first one to find it. He's like, hey, I'm the one that found it. What are you calling it? Well, I'm the discoverer, damn it. So, yeah. That was
very fun.
It was an all-around good movie. And it's rewatchable, too.
This should be a movie that like you watch every year on St. Patrick's Day.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other comedy...
Yeah. The one you mentioned was Extraordinary.
There's a space in between the two words, though, even though they're not supposed to be.
Extraordinary. And this was such a fun movie as well. The main actor, I was not familiar with her, but she was so charming. Yeah. The idea
Higgins?
that the idea that she can see the dead, and she's just sort of like made it secondary. It's no longer an issue for her, but she doesn't necessarily want to be a medium. Where we enter the other character who has recently lost a daughter, he wants to contact her beyond the grave, and I think she just feels bad for him. But
yeah, because she's going out of her way to not do that. She does not want to be in the supernatural arts because her dad kind of forced her into it, if you will.
Yeah, that's right, which you never hear of.
And she sees her dad get killed because she kind of screws up working with him.
Right,
he's trying to channel this poor dog that's been sucked into a puddle or a what do you call it? A pothole. So he's trying to channel the dog for this woman who's got the leash stuck into the pothole, but because his daughter kind of screws up the incantation, he becomes half pothole.
It's so
half
fun.
poodle. Absurd to the max, which makes sense because Will Forte is our main villain in it. I had no idea about this movie or him in it.
And it's such a Will Forte character, It's like they had to have written this role for him and then just been like, please, you got to be in our movie. We wrote it for you. And then he probably read the script, loved it. And that's probably how it happened.
For sure. I mean, if we're honest, the plot itself is a little redundant, but because it's comedy, I don't think it really matters that much. She then enlists the help of this guy whose wife has passed, and now his daughter has been possessed by Will Forte because she's supposedly a virgin. And he's trying to get in good with the devil, so that he can write another pop song. He's a one-hit wonder
Right,
guy
he's
named Christian Winters. But what's
What
also
a-
great about him is his counterpart, Claudia O'Doherty, who you might remember as Birdie from Love. She's this really funny
Yes.
Australian actor. She's now the wife of the main pirate in This Flag Means Death, which
I
is
haven't started that
Texas.
yet.
Yes, she's not in it as much. I've only seen the first 2 episodes. Not in it as much as I wanted to be, but she's great, and she's great in this one too. And what happens to her is unexpected. That caught me off guard. I don't know if you can remember how she bites it.
Yeah.
She's ordering Chinese. She was distracting him from his seance. So he had to slit her throat. That's just
Yeah,
what it was.
2 really great movies that may lean more towards comedies, but definitely have horror elements. So if you haven't seen those, check them out.
Definitely.
Those are movies that you can rewatch over and over.
Top notch. I've been dying to say hoity-toity the whole cast, and I had to put it off to the end because I didn't want to scare away people at the beginning.
That's a good point.
But when I visited Ireland, I was under strict guidance not to say hoity-toity to everyone. But it is so fun in these Irish movies, hearing the language,
Absolutely.
And yeah, it has its own vibe. Irish horror, I hope, continues to persist.
And there are a number of other movies we're not mentioning right now that, because we're trying to keep this to an hour, but The Lodgers is an interesting, more of a gothic, like, ghost story.
I found that the Citadel is supposed to be really good. Haven't seen it yet, but that's another one that kept popping up in people's
Red
lists.
Mist kept popping up. Definitely need to do more. Well, you know what? There's more for next year.
That's exactly right. There's definitely plenty enough that we can give it another go and another year. No.
So just be responsible out there, everybody. Grabbers aren't after you. You don't need to stay drunk the whole time.
And if you know what's good for you, there's this really great St. Patty's themed zombie short I remember being.
That's right. Called The Green Death.
There it is.
The
A Sea
Green Death.
Monsters production at that.
That's right. I try to post that every year, so
Nice.
maybe I'll retweet it from All the Horrible Things.
Hell yeah.
It's
It's okay.
Yeah,
It's
another
got
fun
some fun
concept.
moments.
Yeah,
You can hear
fun
me scream.
concept.
You'll love that.
Yeah.
All right, people, stay alive.